everyone, I'm Gary York, Corruption Behind Bars. Thank you for watching my YouTube channel. And I just thought I'd tell you a little story today about a correctional officer sergeant who worked in the laundry room and enjoyed spankings with a wooden paddle. Yes, it's a true story. I investigated it. It's documented. And here's what happened, and here's how we caught her. An inmate had reported to the Inspector General's office that there was tax fraud going on with a ring of inmates using newly deceased people's Social Security numbers, and they had help on the outside to obtain these Social Security numbers. And they said there is a woman that works at the prison nicknamed the paralegal, and she is bringing in the IRS tax forms and letting the inmates fill them out, and then taking the tax forms back out to the inmate's family, and from there they do what they need to do. So I went and interviewed the inmate who gave me this same information and also gave me the name of the inmate working on the tax forms. And I listened to phone calls from this inmate who had talked about the paralegal and picking up the papers and a couple of IRS things, but nothing much that could give us anything or lead us to anything. So I did pick up the laundry room. Something's going on in the laundry room, and the paralegal works in the laundry room, which was enough to at least get me pointed in the right direction. So I went to the warden, and I talked to the warden, and he said the sergeant is a 16-year veteran in that laundry room, and she does a great job watching the 10 inmates who work in the laundry room, and he feels there's probably nothing going on because she runs a tight ship. So I told the warden that I do have a case file and I have to investigate. So I told the warden, let me do one thing. Let me come in here about midnight tonight, and I need 4 hand-picked correctional officers that we can rely on to work with me in searching that entire laundry room, and keep quiet if we do find anything. And there's a lot of good officers out there, and a lot of officers who are honest and don't like dishonest officers. And we found 4 that we knew were willing to help, and we knew they were great people. And at midnight, the warden, myself, and 4 correctional officers went into the laundry room and searched. And we started in the sergeant's office. And in the sergeant's office, underneath her file cabinets usually have about 1 inch of space underneath. It's kind of hollow if you ever look at the way they're built, was a stack of unfilled out tax forms, IRS tax returns, haven't been filled out yet. I took those, placed them in evidence, marked them for ID. In her desk, we found a picture of some children. Some children around the ages of 8 and 10. And we knew she didn't have any children. We knew she was married. She was married to a correctional officer who had also worked at that same prison for 16 years, and he worked outside squad and maintenance and things like that. So she worked in the laundry room Monday through Friday, weekends and holidays off, and her husband, 16-year veteran, worked in the outside squad. So we knew they didn't have children. So I confiscate those pictures and place them in an evidence bag. The inmate clerk right behind her had his own little office, so she had the front office. And in his office, we found 2 wooden paddles, handmade, primitive type made paddles, something like old schools would use for spankings back in the day that I used to get when I was in school. I confiscated those because I knew they were contraband number 1, and I thought there's nothing in this laundry room that needs to have paddles. So they became evidence. And from above dryer number 5 up in the loft, one of the correctional officers says, we found something. So we go up to the loft above the big dryers, above dryer number 5, and an officer had found a computer that had been missing from the prison library for a while, and it was put together primitively, but it worked. It had a keyboard, and there was a hard drive in it. We took that as evidence. Another officer hollered from the opposite side of the loft, "Hey, got something over here. Check this out." We go over, and it's a bed. There's a bed made up there, and the bed looks like it's been used. So we take pictures, of course, of everything. And everything we find, we take pictures of. Down below, in the back storage room of the laundry room, in the back of the laundry room, another officer says, "Got something." We go over there. We find a hot plate, a coffee maker, kitchen utensils, a bag of potatoes, and some eggs and other things where the inmates have been cooking breakfast back there. So now the warden is getting worried. The tight ship that he thought he had back in the laundry room doesn't seem to be so tight anymore. We gather all the evidence, the pictures, the IRS forms, and all the contraband, and we bag it and tag it, and we place it in my state car, in the trunk of my car, for me to maintain until the case is over. I don't want to have it in too many different hands for the chain of custody. Now, I thought I would subpoena her phone records, and I subpoenaed her phone records through the state attorney. That took a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I can't remember how long it took. We finally get her phone records back, and then I get the inmates' phone list from all the inmates that work in the laundry room, and the inmate clerk in the laundry room was a match. One of the phone numbers frequently called in the St. Petersburg, Florida area, that the sergeant, she frequently called this phone number, turned out to be the grandparents of the convicted murderer's children. The mother did not have custody of the children because the inmate was in prison for killing the mother. So the children were now with the grandparents. So I went and got an inspector, a female inspector, and we drove to St. Petersburg, Pinellas area, and interviewed the grandmother and grandfather while the children were in school. They said, yes, the sergeant calls here all the time. They use her name. I'm going to be polite, although this story is in chapter 14 of my book, Corruption Behind Bars. And they wrote sworn affidavits that she calls during the day, a couple of times a day from her cell phone, and allows the inmate to talk to his children from her cell phone. They said that she even has volunteered for visitation on Saturdays and has talked to them in the visitation park, and she knows the children by first name, and that the sergeant has talked about wanting to marry the children's father if he can ever get out of prison. So we take this information and we go back a week later with all our ammunition, and we ask the warden to use his conference room with a big long table. And on that table I laid out the 2 wooden paddles. I laid out the coffee maker, the hot plate, the IRS tax forms, all the subpoenaed phone records, all the photographs of the children, all sworn affidavits, because, you know, as a correctional officer accused of a crime, you have the right to see the evidence against you during an interview. Now, the female inspector that was with me was new, and she said that she didn't think that we were going to get anything, any kind of confession out of this sergeant of 16 years. But when she walked into that conference room and saw that evidence laying on the table, it had a big effect on her. You could see it. But she's strong. No tears, no crying, no nothing. I turned my tape recorder on and I read her rights, because it's a criminal investigation. She waived her rights and agreed to speak. She was smart, though. She did not admit to any sex with the inmate, but she admitted that they would go in the back room, her and this inmate, this convicted murderer, and she'd kissed him on 10 or 12 different occasions back there, and on several occasions he spanked her with the wooden paddles. Now, you use your imagination and tell me if sex went on or not. She won't admit to the sex, but hey, I'll take it. She admitted to the spankings with the wooden paddles. She admitted to kissing the inmates. And she told me that the other inmates knew there was a relationship going on between her and this inmate, the laundry room inmate clerk. And in order to keep them happy and keep them from talking, she had to let them have things they wanted. She admitted to bringing the blank IRS forms in. Blank. Denied taking them out for the inmates. She said, I gave them the blank IRS tax forms and they did what they want. She admitted that the inmates requested a computer, and she waited till after hours when the library was closed at the prison, and she went and got the extra old computer from the library and brought it into the laundry room for the inmates. She admitted to bringing the hot plate and the coffee pot in for the inmates. She admitted to allowing 2 homosexual inmates to make them a bed up in the loft area that we'd found so that they could have their relationship up there while she had her relationship with a convicted murderer in the back room. When it was all said and done, after our interview, she resigned. Of course, the warden accepted it immediately, and she was gone. The husband of 16 years, Florida's a 25-year retirement. He only had 9 to go, same as her. He resigned, and the wardens told him, please don't resign. He was a good man, a good worker, a good officer. He was in denial that this happened. Today, a few years later, he is still married to her, and they still live in Florida, just don't work for the Department of Corrections anymore. The warden agreed to let him move to another prison so he could be transferred and work in another prison, but the embarrassment, I think, was just too much for him. I wish he would have took the offer, because now he would be almost fully retired from corrections, and I hate to see anyone lose their career after all those years. Everyone knows he was a stand-up guy, and we never had an allegation against him. The tax fraud scam by the inmates is what got the laundry room sergeant caught. My question is also, nobody was checking behind the sergeant? You have a sergeant, 16 years at the same prison. The warden on down said she was good as gold. The Queen of Polk County. I think I gave that away, but it's okay. I think it's in my book anyway. And I guess that they just thought she was such a great sergeant, correctional officer sergeant, nothing could possibly be wrong in that laundry room. And now we know what went on in that laundry room. We never got a confession of sex, but we sure got a confession of spankings and kissing and all kinds of things going on in the laundry room. I sent my investigation to the federal prosecutor, state attorney, and the IRS. She was fired, of course, lost her certification for life, is not in law enforcement anymore, is not in corrections, but no charges. Can you believe that, folks? No charges. And the IRS, when I talked to their investigator, said, we have so many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases across the United States of IRS tax scams going on in the prisons. We can't keep up. Well, folks, we can put a man on the moon in this country. We can develop some high-tech things that go on, but we don't have enough manpower in our federal government to investigate IRS tax fraud. I did my part. She's gone. All the inmates were transferred out. And by the way, when I interviewed the convicted murderer, he told me to go fuck myself, gave me no statement, and I transferred him way up in North Florida in the Panhandle, as far away as I could get him from this Central Florida area. That's just the way we do it, folks, when the wrongdoing is going on. Thank goodness no one got hurt or injured, which is a result of many of these staff-inmate relationships. Thank goodness no one escaped from this prison because of this sergeant's neglect and worry. And one other thing, when my office looked at the pictures of this inmate, all of us said the same thing at the same time. We were totally shocked at how much This inmate looked like her husband. It was a striking resemblance. Just a really strange case, and it's a shame that she and her husband both worked at the same prison, and she would do this to him and place all the honest officers in jeopardy, and other inmates as well. Thank you for watching Corruption Behind Bars. If you like this video, please subscribe. Thank you.